What's going on? Most of y'all that watch my stuff don't subscribe. I would appreciate if you did subscribe. For every sub, like, comment, pretty much anything that hits my channel, I will give my dog Bernie one belly rub. It'll make him very happy. Now let's get to using useContext. Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to be looking at useContext. Let me know below if this text is fine. I made it a little bit bigger than the last video when I was using CodeSandbox.io, and I want you all to be able to see this. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm sitting here recording it, but let me know. And also, I'm sorry if CodeSandbox.io is a little slow. I may not make an error, but I may think I'm making an error because sometimes it lags a little bit. But let's get into useContext here. So it's cool because it's like useState, but it's for multiple components. So useState is good when you're in one component, but say you want to get a value that is in component A, but you're in component C. Well, typically you would pass the value from A to B to C, and this is known as prop drilling. There's nothing super wrong with it, depending on how you set up your application, but as things get larger, things get a bit more hairy, and you just want to pass a value from A to C. You want to get rid of prop drilling, especially, like I said, in complex apps. You start weaving together just code that doesn't need to be there, and it just makes things messier. So let me show you how to make the context. The next thing we're going to do after that is we're going to wrap it in our app.js file, and then we're going to make the part of our work here, our component, that is going to consume that context we've created. And then I'm going to show you some variations and fun stuff you could do there. So let's get moving. All right, so right here we have our React.createContext. And so this just has no value in here. And we're going to make it an export because we're going to want to use it in other files. And you may be thinking like, well, wait, what? So we're actually going to be wrapping parts of our project. So that way this value is able to get used throughout. And this is one method that I used to do it. I think I've seen like a couple other variations, but this is how I go about my wrapping. And so I'm just going to use the props children here. And so I'm going to go into app.js next. I'm going to import this component here, and then I'm going to make the component that consumes this value. And so you can see what I'm talking about here. I'm just bringing this in, and whatever is going to go in here is going to be able to access this value of 100. So let's go ahead and make that component. And so right here, I'm inside of the useContext file here. So this may not be most appropriately named. Let me switch this up right here. I'm not going to be using any props. So how do I just magically get this context? And the answer is no. But this is actually a really quick one-liner to show you how we get it. Actually, it's technically two. And so now the next thing we want to do is come into here, and we want to bring in our useContext component, and everything should work. We see here that this is the useContext tutorial here. And if we go in, we could see inside of this actual component that works, I consume the value here, and the value is 100. So that's pretty cool. That's a pretty slick way of just wrapping your application. So imagine if you had a multitude of other things going on. Say you needed an edit mode, or you needed to inform the entire application or chunks of the application that a decision has been made by the user somewhere else. And so some of the functionality in your app may change. Now, this isn't something you should abuse, because you can imagine as you get more and more and more components, this just gets larger and larger and larger. So you want to be a bit more strategic. Do you want to use context, or do you want to use composition, or some other strategy to assemble your React application? But this is pretty powerful. So now if I wanted to come back in here and I wanted to have my context, let's say I wanted to have something that was like this. So you can see that we could put a string in here, which is pretty cool. If I wanted to as well, I could actually do this. And so even in here, let me move this down here. I'll get rid of that. We can see we can even pass an object down. Now you could pass functions and other stuff like that as well. And that is super, super, super helpful. All right, so in this section, I'm going to show you how to update your context. There could be more than one way of doing this. React is pretty cool and pretty, I think, innovative in some ways, that there's so many ways to break down a website, but also so many ways now to just logically piece things together. But sometimes you're going to want to update your context. And so one way I like doing that is using a combination of useState alongside of using the context. And so it's as easy as it sounds. So we're going to make our state first. And then the next thing I do is I'm going to create an object. I'm going to name it store. You can name it banana pudding if you wanted to. And we're going to pass that in to the value here. So I'm going to save that, and we see that there's still an issue. Now why? We're passing everything in accordingly, but everything is in some context here, and we have to access that object's value, which would be like this. Value is 100. So there's many ways you could, if you have buttons, clicky things, timed events, whatever, you could update this store here. But I'm just going to do it right here in line and show you a very easy way of doing it. So now that we are bringing this in here, the next thing we do is use set value to 99. And if I wanted to come back in and switch it to 93, I could do so, and it'll update right here. And that is a way of telling our context, hey, we want to change the value. But I think this is a very unique way of using useState and context together. I hope it's helpful. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you in the next video.